Hey, what's up? My name's John. I'm the crypto homie.
Hi, I'm Jillian, the Bitcoin babe.
And obviously tonight we are missing Jess. She had some last minute family stuff come up. So we miss you, Jess, and we wish you the best with everything that's going on. But Jill, go ahead and introduce our guest, please.
Hi, so this is Sharon. We met at Bitcoin Ben's event in July, and immediately she started talking, and I was like, I need to talk to her. Like, she has some information that makes a lot of sense because, there's been a lot of disconnect. And there's a lot of disconnect that we're all experiencing, and we're watching it with our family and friends, and it's been a very difficult time, especially with the media, social media. Some of us are making different life choices. And so Sharon started piecing some of that together and some of the history. And I was like, we just need to have you on the show. So Sharon, we're so happy to have you here. And can you share a little bit about what you do?
Okay, well, I own a healing arts clinic, Collective Harmony Healing Arts, and I also own Collective Crypto Strategies. And I've had a lot of people go, healing arts clinic, and then you're into cryptos? What the heck are cryptos? And I said, well, wealth. You have to protect your wealth. Well, how does that go into a healing arts clinic? And I was like, because health and wealth are intertwined. Your mindset around wealth, which is, the wealth in your relationships, not only financial wealth, but just the wealth and abundance that you're living in your life, the wealth of happiness. Are you content? And understanding how all of that starts to play into each other. And of course, we're all kind of looking at like, what the heck is going on in the world? And so cryptos, because I was always interested in Bitcoin back when, Satoshi's white paper came out, way back when.
OG status.
Oh, yeah. So, and so then it just worked out, and just coming across, Ben's amazing. And so then just found my way into the founders group. And so it's just morphing into stuff because we really do need to be on the front lines helping people make this transition. Absolutely. And really help them with their mindset. Because I'm seeing a lot of people as I work with the transformational life coaching, people that are coming in and they're like, what is going on?
Yeah, absolutely.
On that point, like what I consider myself to not be in the know of anything crypto, what's happening with the world and a lot of the larger agendas at play. And then COVID hit. And I have a background in like natural health. I have Lyme disease. I heal myself with frequency biofeedback. And so I studied public health at Berkeley, where at the time it wasn't all like woke liberalism. We actually talked about big pharma and some of the issues there. And so when I started to see like the censorship and the kind of the stuff that's being pushed on us, I was like, this is costing lives. This is very dangerous. And then I was like trying to talk with my family about the censorship, and they're like, oh, well, that's misinformation. Don't talk about that. And I was like, no, like something's seriously wrong. So when you're talking about the mentality, my entire reality broke down. And now I'm getting to that point where I'm like a little bit more solid because I understand what's going on and I'm not like as emotional, but it's been tough. And, John and I were talking before we started, before you hopped on, about how sometimes we just need to take ourselves out of it a little bit so we can prepare for what's coming, I think.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I think, so I've been, I guess, part of the broader maybe truther movement. Obviously, I've been following Bitcoin Ben since like 2017, but even before that, I was following other accounts. I've watched X22 for years, and a lot of great other Patriot accounts that are no longer around for obvious reasons. But yeah, I've watched things over the years, kind of. They started off, I remember a couple of years ago when the first stuff with Trump was getting into the media with the Mueller case, and just how slow it was. It was day by day. It was the same topics. And to see how much everything has just spiraled. It's like we're in this whirlpool and it's just pulling us down faster and faster into this chaos. And I think people are starting to just not be able to cope with how much information is coming out. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance that's going on. People are faced with these facts that go against their sort of programming in a way, and they're not able to understand and be able to process that information. Like a lot of the conversations I'll have, and friends of mine will have that with these, they don't know how to register this information. So you maybe talk on how did people get into this mind state of sort of like this NPC mentality where they don't know how to really think anymore?
Well, that started a long time ago. So when we understand history of all of this, and that's, why we're seeing some of this, we're just going to kind of shovel this away, but when we're looking at, there's reasons why there are books written that actually, one of the titles of the books is called Operation Paperclip. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you do have things that talk about, Project Monarch. That, and there's, and there's more and more. So, I mean, you have movies that are out there about mind control. I mean, look at the James Bond movies and Austin Powers. I mean, so it's like, if you're paying attention and then you listen to the linguistics, because that's what I do is, the transformational life coaching is words matter. And so when we understand what are these words that they're using and how is this affecting everyone? And then let's start adding in video games. Okay. Because I mean, I came from I remember when, it was Oregon Trail, and it was ARPANET, and there was like, oh, look, we're going to play Pong. This is like really cool. Right. And here I am, doing this stuff. And, it's really important to understand all of this. And how did we get to these screens and understanding, like when at the conference, Jillian, that's when we talk about the flicker effect. Yeah. And, that's been studied. I mean, so when you have like the Illuminating Engineers Society and they're writing articles about, fluorescent light toxicity and what is that doing to people back in the 80s and 90s. So they knew that light flickering would cause seizures. You saw it probably the first time I noticed it was in the movie The Andromeda Strain, where one of the scientists just got fixated on the light. Mm-hmm. Okay, boom, he went into a seizure. Mm-hmm. And it was a very silent one, but he was just boom right there. And so when they understood that, and so then you start looking at it like, let's explore this. And then noticing, in the 50s, I think it was, with the movie theaters, or it was the 60s, where they would just quickly flash, like popcorn or soda. And they would notice that their sales, would just go up whenever they did that. So then they knew that they couldn't do that advertising. Well, they knew they couldn't do it, but we know better. Mm-hmm. Because then we ended up with, all of these different things that are starting to show up, is we can hear in the languaging that's showing up, in different platforms, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so now people are talking about the flicker effect. Now you hear things about mind control and what is going on. And my God, I mean, even the CDC had a thing on their website called the zombie apocalypse. How to survive a zombie apocalypse. Right. Well, when you are getting people addicted to video games, okay, because it started with, back, of course, what was that? The 70s, mid 70s. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, somewhere in there. And, so now we're getting into arcades. I mean, I remember as a kid, oh my God, going to the arcade was like the coolest thing ever. And so you get into that. And they also know now, look at casinos, because now you have the screens. They're no longer the one-armed bandits with the actual mechanics. It's with screens. So they also knew how to get the synchronization of those screens, the flickering, along with the lights, the bells, the whistles, the sounds, that actually it would do things, and get stimulation in your brain. Mm-hmm. And so it's amazing that we're seeing all kinds of stuff come forward now.
So when you mentioned the flicker effect, I immediately went to Google. Mm-hmm. Nothing came up. Then I went to DuckDuckGo. Nothing came up. So I actually wasn't able to figure out what the flicker effect was. So could you maybe explain that? And why in the world would anyone what's the point of the flicker effect? Is it to advertise to us, or is there maybe another deeper meaning behind it or agenda?
Well, and actually this comes from the IEEE. Okay. So, which is the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. All right. And they actually have acronyms and abbreviations for this, so they know what goes on with these different types of lights. And so they have a critical flicker fusion frequency. So they've measured these frequencies, their actual wavelengths. All right. Then they have compact fluorescent lights, and they go into what these different graphs, high intensity discharge. They go through the modulation, and that's what we're watching is the modulation of the flicker. And so they actually say, well, with lights, make sure that you aren't in the frequency that will cause seizures. Okay. And so there's a lot of information, and they have, they have grids, there's a lot of stuff, and they tell you what values are here. And even with LEDs, they're working on what is the flicker of an LED. Yeah.
So is it something that they're just measuring, or is it something that's like intentionally put into these things?
It's just the way light works, because light is a frequency. Okay. It has a wavelength. So anything with a frequency has a wavelength. All right. And so when we understand those wavelengths based on the type of light that it is, because sunlight coming through the leaves of the trees, if the leaves are doing something and somebody's watching it and it happens to hit the right frequency as the leaves are kind of shadowing the sunlight, a person can have a seizure. So it's all about the modulation of the light wave. So when we take that to like video games, knowing what they knew, and then we're looking at different screens. So then you start looking at how is that flickering across the screen. So before we had LED screens, or the LCD, I think it was before that, is when you had the tubes, you could hold your camera up and see the waving of the screen.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that was also for some people, the waving, they had to adjust that. And some people are like, oh, that's not there. I'm not going to find anything on it. Well, probably not, because I have the documents, because like I said, this is the 80s and 90s. So, if they're still out there, I'm sure you can dig and find it maybe in some archived or scholar search. But so it's understanding how that works, and then that you can create addictions, because addictions are neurochemicals in your brain.
Wow. So it can cause an addiction.
Yes. So that's why you see people, they're addicted to their video games.
Yeah.
Okay. And they'll sit there and they'll play and they'll play and they'll play. They won't even eat, sleep, or drink, because they're going to play.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Because there's a neurochemical response that's taking place.
Yeah.
Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about these neurochemicals. It was like in the movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? Okay, where he talks about the neurochemicals that start to give us these emotional responses. And so when we understand that and how those can be used, and they, just like a knife, you can cut some roast beef or you can cut somebody.
Yeah.
It's your intention.
Right. Well, and we obviously know, at this point, how much funding and money goes into the research of this stuff to really be weaponized against us. And I mean, we, just with social media, just by itself, social media obviously does the exact same thing you're talking about, where it really creates this addicting environment within our brains and what's going on and how it affects that. But then you tack on kind of what you're talking about. And it's sort of like, well, so what would you recommend for someone obviously who's trying to combat this stuff? What's the best way, or are there techniques to maybe snap out of some of these sort of zombie-like stages we get put into?
Unplug.
Yeah.
I mean, it's to unplug, limit your screen time. And you'll probably notice maybe amongst your peer groups, those that are able to think critically and logically are probably the ones that unplug. They're reading books, they're playing music, they're maybe out, grounding themselves somehow, like walking in nature, gardening, landscape, anything. And they tend to, because they are no longer getting, as they said, the programming via the screen, because our eyes, we just boom, they're the gateway to the soul.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why, if you go into any, I call it ancient texts, which is your different ideologies, if you will, is that you're to guard your eyes and your ears, because that's what goes into your soul, goes into your heart. And so when we're looking at, all these different things that are like, what is going on with people? Because they're just like, oh my gosh, are you even thinking?
So there's, yeah. And like, so maybe we can talk about maybe a couple of examples that we're seeing right now as far as programming. Because honestly, it's the weirdest thing where I'll have a conversation with someone and they either totally shut down, react like in, like, what are you talking about? We're not going to like, it's very defensive. It's a very weird dynamic that I've noticed that's intensified over the past year and a half. So maybe we can talk about some of the techniques that are being used and maybe possible like intentions behind those techniques on the population.
There's quite a few because you're hitting different aspects of people that are stimulated by different things. And so when we understand that people are most susceptible when they're in a high beta state. So your brain waves, here again, frequencies. So you have beta, alpha, delta, theta, gamma. Now, and Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about this. So we are mostly in our waking state, we are in beta. And when we're in low beta is like reading a book, you're aware of your surroundings. High beta is like, the saber-toothed tiger is right here. Oh my gosh, I need to run,
Sort of the fight or flight kind of mentality.
Exactly. It's your total fight, flight, or freeze. Mm-hmm. And we added freeze in there because now we can't go after the saber-toothed tiger because it's really the person in the corner office. Okay. So you're just like, which causes more stress, which causes more of a cognitive dissonance, which is that cognitive dissonance also creates a desynchronization of the cerebral hemispheres. All right. So now you don't have everything communication going left to right, right to left. Okay. Because that's our brains are lateral processors. Okay. It has to move right to left, left to right. And so now there's nothing happening. So it's almost like people are fragmented. Okay. So when people were showing those that were, protesting, if you will, the mostly peaceful protest, but they showed them, if you took and drew a line down their face, you would see two different people. Do you ever notice that? How half their face, if you covered up half their face, like one eye would be smaller or down and the other would be more open?
That actually makes a lot of sense. I never even like considered it, but I was like, now that I'm thinking about it, yeah.
So whenever you see those pictures, and look to see and create a line and notice, do you have some sort of what we call in our work a laterality disturbance? All right. Which means there is no connection between right and left and right. There's no communication. So it's going to be just boom. All right. And that's how you get a hold. And that's where then it's the beginnings of the fragmentation of the psyche.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, well, Jill, you're kind of talking about, and we're all just the whole idea of this cognitive dissonance and how we can't even have rational conversations anymore with people. It's so black and white now. You're either on that side or this side. And, when you get to that stage where reasoning and critical thinking is sort of gone, and you can either be an NPC where you just sort of regurgitate the echo chamber talking points, or nothing else. Like that's all you know how to do. That's all that the people you're surrounded with, that's all they do. So that's all that you do. That's all you see on TV and on social media. And then you get someone who actually tries to come in and break that down. You get really adverse reactions from that. People just freak out. And it really, to me, it's like these people are digging in their heels now, right? Because they've they've attached themselves to this narrative, to this lie in so many categories in the world now. But it's when their emotionality and their whole kind of essence and being is attached now to this lie. So when you try to break down the lie and show them that it's a lie and then it's not true, they take that as a personal attack on them and their psyche and their character, because if you break down that lie, you break down everything that they are at this point. So it's a really sad state of being. But we have to talk about how people are being zombified and turned into this now with these techniques.
Well, there's a video that went viral from the Lollapalooza in Chicago. I mean, look at those people. All right. So now we have this energy of this group. Okay. And you have the stage and you got that, those speakers, back in the day for us, it was like the wall of Marshalls, right? You know? Okay. And so you got the speakers and you got that thumping going. Okay. And that's where we know that, you know, with drums and whatnot, you can tell because it gets people into the same thing. They entrain. And then you add these lights that start flashing. Okay. So now we've got this physical beat. All right. You're feeling it, everybody. And now the crowd is moving together. They're now synchronizing. Okay. Now we're going to add these lights and they're going to be flashing and they're a certain color, you know, and they start giving different colors because now it's like, whoa, what's this? Okay. And then I was like, oh my God, I lost my mind. Because then the person on the stage had this syringe, you know, this thing, and he's jumping up and down with the crowd and shouting, jab, 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 jab. And the crowd's going, yeah, jab. They don't even know what they're doing. Now,
Whoa.
it was almost like one giant rave, okay, where everybody's just at the rave. You're hypnotized. You're in a hypnotic state. You're totally desynchronized.
Mm-hmm.
And now you are so open to a post-hypnotic suggestion. And that's what happens. So video games, getting into Facebook, and so we got people, and pretty soon, because there's an emotional response. And I tell people, there's your drug of choice. Which one do you want? Do you want adrenaline? Do you want anger? Do you want sadness? Do you want depression? Just mainline it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I think it was today I saw it was some, I don't know, it wasn't Lollapalooza, it was some festival recently where like Chuck Schumer got up and was like rapping on stage about, you know, getting, you know what, and it was just like, this is the most bizarre thing that and it's so blatant and obvious now. This is to me, and I've been saying this to, you know, like my girlfriend, because she's starting to have a tough time being in the nursing industry and all that stuff that's going on. This is the end game. This is sort of like we have the beast is cornered right now, and it might not feel like it, but for someone who, again, I've been, you know, I follow like a lot of Groyper accounts, so there's a lot of things that I see that like the narrative isn't always what it seems, and the way I interpret it these days is that we're inching closer and closer to just, there's so much truth, and like as Cliff High talks about, like woo, like just breaking through into reality now, that it's great to see, but like the more that happens, the more that we're going to get resistance, and the more that these people are going to fight against the woo coming out. But it's inevitable, and this stuff is going to happen. But it always comes back to me at the end of the day. I've wanted to help as many people as I can wake up to as much as possible, because eventually, you know, it's going to get to a point where people's brains and people's psyches are going to start to crack, and there's going to be brain damage, and people are never going to recover from this stage. And so, but it's almost to the point now where, you know, again, like I was saying, black and white, you're either a somewhat open-minded, critical thinking individual, or you've just kind of given up, and they broke you down to the point where you just accept the programming. And it's tough to see. You can't even really have those conversations anymore.
You can, but probably, this is a Netflix TV show, so I always kind of go, because they always show us, not only show us what it's coming, but they show you the way out.
Oh,
okay. So you have to also pay attention, because they show you the way out. So here's what's coming.
It's just a game. It's a game to them.
And that's why in business, they actually started teaching people game theory. All right. And so, okay, so now you're with me. All right. So so in the Netflix series Gotham, all right, there's the characters that he plays the Penguin, and he had his right-hand man, but they actually conditioned him so that he would play a certain role, and he was into it because he was conditioned, much like Project Monarch. All right. Now, the one way to get them out of it is with the key phrase that breaks them out so they can access their true psyche. Now, believe it or not, Tony Robbins, he used to teach all that kind of stuff. Okay.
So did he help people get out of it?
If I remember correctly, because this was from my NLP instructor, because she did some stuff with him. He was actually the one that was training the spies to compartmentalize their psyches. Okay. So that you can go under deep cover and you are completely Here again, this is like Project Monarch. You are completely somebody else, but your original program has now been sequestered off and kept safe and will be brought back with a key term.
Right. I remember seeing, and again, you tapped on this, how they, it's always this with Hollywood and these shows and music and it's all this, they put everything that they do out there in movies and in TV shows to fictionalize it and make people, oh, that would never happen in real life. But that's a lot of the red pill conversations I have. It's just like, look at, the Bourne Identity. They really do that to people. Like that's how they break people's psyches, and then they plant people into, society, just like you're talking about. And it's just, and people just can't accept that as reality, and then that's something that really happens. But with just a little bit of being an open-minded person and being curious about this stuff, you're going to start to see it pretty quickly that this stuff is real. What the CIA and the FBI do, it's real. And we're, speaking of like with what's going on in Afghanistan, I don't know if you guys saw the plane stuff. I don't know, man. I don't know if that was, I don't know what to think of that stuff. I just don't know what to think of anything these days. It's all, I think there's a veil over everything, and everything is either some sort of show that's sort of used to wake up a certain demographic that's ready for a certain thing, but then also confuse another demographic. I can't, it's really hard to keep track of these days.
Well, and it's meant to do that, because when you're trying to keep track of it, I'm going to put this question to the two of you. If you're trying to keep track of that, are you keeping track of you? Are you keeping track of your internal environment? Are you keeping track of what you need for your highest and greatest good? Are you checking in with yourself? Are you unplugging when your body is saying, I need something different? Are you listening to that inner voice, that still small voice? No, because what they're trying to do is override that, so people no longer are using their intuition. And that's what I see the most of when people come in for coaching at the clinic. And I'm even, getting people online now. They're like, oh my God. And so we have to just help them, because one of the ways to assist them, because we do not heal people. We are merely the facilitators. They are the healers. I tell people, I don't heal you. You do it.
Yeah.
I'm just here to help you gain access to your ability to do that. I'm here to help you gain access to listening to your still small voice, because it knows what you need. Your internal operating system is much more intelligent than this, or what I think your internal operating system is.
It's so interesting that you're talking about that, because even the people that are aware and watching this, like, we're almost getting emotionally hijacked as well. Like, it's almost like whoever is kind of like doing, and this is just my like guess, because this has been happening to me where I get so pulled in so many different directions. I'm a teacher in California, and when Newsom starts talking about, the verification system, I almost lost it. And when that happened, it made me realize, wow, I need to not be so involved in that. And I have been getting that message. For me, I consider it God, where I'm like, you need to disconnect. And I like can't even bring myself to go on Instagram anymore. I'm just like, I need to completely disconnect from that, because it's almost taking me out of my power to actually do something. I'm just being like in that system, in that matrix.
Yeah, Jill, we're so Court and I are in the exact same spot for probably the last 2 weeks. We're, like I said, she's very overloaded with what's going on, and I too am absorbing that, that topic, even though it's not affecting me directly. But I can't tell you how many like social media breaks that we've been forcing ourselves to take the last couple of weeks, just because it's just this, again, this whirlpool, this vortex of and they design it like that on purpose to keep you, like you're saying, Sharon, distracted from really what's going on internally, and keeping yourself healthy, keeping yourself, spiritually healthy. And it's just insane.
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, this is big. And it's when you can understand the magnitude. One of the programs that we're going to be launching here is called the 4 Unifying Fields of Connection. And what that is I help people understand, we've been doing all this self-help. So you're like the center. And then you go out and there's your family. And how do you relate to your family? How does your family relate to you? Because there's a frequency that's going back and forth. Now, then we go out to the community, and your community could be your classroom. It could be the fellow teachers. It could be, whatever, Bitcoin Ben's group. That's a community. Then we go to the world at large. Now, here's the piece that we have been missing because, oh my goodness, kids, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. No. Self-help group, family groups. Oh, let's go to the grief group. Okay, now we're in this, but the world at large. Oh, well, there's all these do-goods, it's Mother Teresa, la, la, la. Okay, no, because they didn't want you paying attention to the influences that were actually going to weave their way in to you. So what we work with is recognizing what is drawing your attention in the world at large. Is that pattern reminiscent of what you're witnessing and experiencing in your community? If it is, are you experiencing it in your family? Because then it's telling you what within you needs to be healed. So then when you take that frequency, that energy, because you're recreating it, your attention, your unconscious, higher conscious mind is attracting you. It's drawing your attention to the world at large going, this is what, like, my God, everywhere I go, I keep seeing, this. I see kitties up in trees. Oh my gosh, there's another cat in the tree, another cat in the tree. It was like, okay, wait a minute. So what is about the cat in the tree? Is there a theme? Oh, it's about maybe running away from something, whatever. I'm throwing stuff out there, So then you ask, well, what within yourself are you running away from? And then when we find that piece, we unravel it, much like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Once we find that, what is it that once we release it pulls everything with it? Now, I did this for a couple of people. One gal said she could not stand listening to Trump. I'm like, he's just a man. What about that? And so we did some work. It came down to she was so pissed at her father because her mother passed away from emphysema and COPD because he smoked in the house, and she couldn't stand listening to him because he didn't care about her mom. The crazy part was once we did all of that, what within her needed to be healed, she came back, she goes, you need to do that again. I listened to his speech. He's brilliant. I was like, oh, imagine that. And
well, that's so interesting how just that sort of anecdote can be extrapolated into, I'm sure, just millions of cases that they know what you're talking about, and they've just used everything in their arsenal to do probably just that, to manipulate people's perceptions, whether it's politically, whether, whatever they need to sort of shift people away from at the time, they probably use these techniques and again, sort of get under our psyche and then sort of just tweak us a little bit. And, oh, no, I don't like this guy. I'm going to vote for, the fucking clown. So,
and it can even be, it can even, and it's branding, because that was also written about in Operation Paperclip in her book about, Walt Disney and how he branded using the examples from what was brought over from Germany, the scientists, and how you could manipulate the mind and get people loyal to a brand, whether it was good for them or not.
And wow, that's man, just okay. So again, what you just said, what's the biggest sort of brand kind of just ideology right now? And man, that's again going back to these conversations of it. You can give someone, you could say somebody cured COVID. You could say that, you could release it, and these people are going to be angry about that. Well, you should still be doing what. It's like, it's insane how attached and how to this ideology they are. But I guess through these techniques, just over the last, what has it been, 18 months now of this crap, almost. So that's a long time, and all this sort of programming is probably really sunk in. And again, now these unfortunately, these folks are just, they picked that side and they're digging their heels in. So, man.
And I come from it thinking of like, well, it's censorship. Google, Facebook, Instagram, they're controlling our reality through censorship. They're only presenting one side. They're, when the doctors are talking about things like ivermectin or the lab leak theory, these types of things that are like totally wiped from the internet. And then if you talk about it, you're a crazy person. But it seems like it goes much.
A terrorist, Jill. So It's what we talk about.
Right. And it's like the data is backing up a lot of the stuff that we've been seeing for months now, like the massive amounts of data, but it goes deeper than just censorship and just blocking one side. From what I'm hearing, a lot of it is like programming, and so maybe we can talk about that, like the programming, like why would anyone want to do that? Why is there such a strong push to get this shot right now? Like, I don't understand. Is it really about our health? Like, because the other side is saying, well, they agree, they're fine with the advertising, they're fine with censorship because they think it's for the greater good. They think it's going to save lives. I'm not convinced, because things like ivermectin, there's 60 studies out there that show very, very positive results, and it could probably end all of this. So I don't understand why we're pushing that so much. And then you look into what's going on and what is in that jab. That is really alarming to me. I don't know if we want to get into that, but it's just, there seems to be a lot of nefarious, like a big nefarious agenda with all of this.
So part of it, when there's a conditioning going on, is the last thing you want to do is I train horses and stuff too. And so you have to think of, well, if you're looking for the horse and the rider to do a particular thing, we have to bring them into sync with an understanding. You're not going to get out there and go, do this, all right, because you're going to get more resistance. And so it's kind of like, okay. And so use Socratic method. Use the Socratic method. And when you start questioning, because remember, when you're watching stuff, if you notice, the message is, you will. This is linguistics. Cliff High is really big on language. Mm-hmm. Words matter. I am such a stickler that words matter. Mm-hmm. And when you understand, oh, well, the probability of blah, 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 but what is the key words that they're using? Because they're looking for either an anger response, or they're going to keep the anxiety higher, because when the brain is in a state of anxiety, you're running on adrenaline. It's the fight, flight, or freeze. Mm-hmm. Okay. The sympathetic nervous system is on hyperdrive, and you're keeping people in high beta. All right. High beta. Mm-hmm. And that uses a lot of energy. So that's why we're seeing fatigue. We're seeing anger, because when people get fatigued, think of small babies. What do they do when they're tired? No, and they're like, no, don't tell me what to do, And so it starts to take its toll. But that is also, think of the techniques that they use in boot camp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. It's to break the person down. You're going to break down the identity of that individual, because you're looking for them to become the Army or the Navy or whatever it is, because you're going to be, Semper Fi, hoorah, with your team, because they need to create this cohesive team. So it's about breaking down the psyche. And some psyches, if they break down too far, they fragment. Okay. Yeah. And once they're fragmented, now you got a total cluster on your hands, because you don't know what's going to show up. But those are the ones that you can easily influence. Kissinger talked about this. This is like old KGB kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay. And once you break it down, they are so easy to incite into violence, because they're already there. Yeah. Because they're angry, but they don't know what they're angry about, because their psyche has been fragmented. Their identity has been stolen from them. So F you. Who are you to tell me? Because I don't even know who I am.
Yeah.
So are we seeing this in the general population, or are there certain groups, like as far as the fragmentation, how can one recognize when someone is in that state?
Again, you will see a laterality disturbance. I'm serious. You'll start to see, like, it's a physical, for some, like one side of their face will droop down, or it will take on a distorted view. It's almost like you're looking at two different people. Okay. That's when you know you've got a fragmentation going.
And again, is that something that's sort of, you're talking about the left-right paradigm, is that sort of the left and right brain sort of not, again, being in cohesion? And then now it's just yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I'm sorry.
Well, is that being done like through media messaging too, and like fear about the pandemic, or like how is it?
Yeah, so they get people. George Carlin. Do you guys ever see any of George Carlin stuff? The comedian. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Okay, you're gonna have to look up George Carlin. He's got a couple of things about germs, And he went on about, he goes, my God, we are creating a population of germaphobes. Okay. This was like 15, 18 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. This conditioning has been going on for a very long time. My God, hand sanitizers. Okay. Really? Are you kidding me? I remember my great grandmother throwing us outside like, you got to eat a bushel of dirt before you die.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
we'd go out into the garden and just wash the stuff off. Here's some carrots. Here's some this, you know, because it took care of your microbiome. So, you know, it was about maybe 20 years ago that we started seeing what they called industrial disease. I mean, Dire Straits even wrote a song called Industrial Disease. Okay, where everything was so clean and sanitary that now your critters that actually kept you safe were gone.
Right.
Okay. And people were getting sick. And that's when it was kind of like, what? This is getting creepier by the day. So this is a very, I tell people, this is a very, very, very long game.
Yeah.
Long game.
So for people who are maybe feeling disconnected and just and can't quite put their finger on what's going on with them, what are you talk about unplugging? Are there any other steps that you would recommend? Talk about grounding. Are there anything else you would recommend to people to just sort of, again, try to recenter themselves and try to, if they are experiencing sort of that fragmentation, is it possible to sort of bring themselves back to a good psyche?
You know,
and can they recognize when they're in it?
You know, some can, if they're surrounded by people that kind of look at them and go, are you okay? You know, what's going on? But if they're in their own little created echo chamber, okay, you have to wait until they're ready to go out to the periphery. That's much like, I believe it's Aristotle's Republic. So here again, philosophy, we've been told, we're told time and time again how to get out of this. And I believe it's Aristotle's Republic where it talks about the cave and everyone's down in this dark cave, but they see these shadows that are flickering on the wall. And someone finally makes their way out and they see the sunlight and they see grass and they come back down. They're like, do you know what's out there? And they're like, what are you doing? No, what did you go out there for? You know? So Aristotle is writing about, okay, look at how old that piece of literature is. So they're talking about this. There's a really great philosophy book called Sophie's World, in which the author goes through the natural philosophers, and natural philosophers talked about atoms and the psyche and the body. So this is an age-old thing that's just gotten more and more refined, and we are becoming aware. I mean, there's different terms out there calling this like the Great Awakening. Well, it's about becoming aware of who you are, you know, your inner being.
Well,
and even sorry.
Oh, no, you go ahead, Jess. I'll say it next time.
Well, and I was thinking, like, you call me Jess.
I always do that.
I got distracted. But like becoming aware, like I'm reading Dr. McCullough's book, The Truth About this, what's going on. And he starts outlining like the technocrats and how this started years ago. And a lot of it is really a mechanism of control. You know, we are consumers if we're controlled, and when people were talking about like, oh, you're a debt slave, I'm like, I'm not a slave. What are you talking about? Like, why would you even say that? But now I see, oh my goodness, I was in this, like I was in it. I believed, and to be so like, this is the way life is, and this is the way that has to be, and not question it and not question the influence that like the technocrats or whoever, you know, the powers that be had on my personal life. Once I started to realize that control and how I was serving them, I was like, whoa. And I think that's where people don't realize that. They think, oh, it's just advertising, or, oh, it's just technology evolving. But there's been some things going on for a while, and it's slowly been rolled out, and now it's rapidly going. And I think they had to speed things up based on maybe Trump. I don't know. It just seemed like that was kind of like a monkey wrench in their long plan. What do you guys think?
So, so Jill, I remember you had an interesting kind of story when I was first getting to know you, how you just even recently were sort of that red pill moment of, oh, and then that's kind of what you're just talking about, how you saw something that sort of brought you back. And it's sort of like Sharon, what you were saying earlier, that brought you back, that maybe triggered you back into your real conscious, the real reality of stuff. And so I always, you know, I ponder this stuff of what's happening. Why is why are things taking so long? You know, I was, again, following this stuff since maybe 2016, 2017. I always thought, you know, November was going to be it, right? And things were going to start to work out. But I've come to kind of accept the long game of this, and the drip method of all of this of woo coming back into reality. And I just think that I still kind of hold to that. That's the safest way to have as many people go through what you did, Jillian, where you have that moment of it's not that it breaks your psyche, but it just brings you back. It's just that little bit of drip information every day and it brings you back to sort of the reality. And hopefully that leads to the most amount of sort of red pill moments with people rather than black pill, where they just sort of lose it, you know. But I don't know, it's hard to know what the end game is with all this.
Well, my grandmother worked with the gentleman that invented the first computer. She was at UNIVAC. Okay. And then she was around Europe. I got like a little bracelet, and she'd tell me the stories of each place because she got a charm where they were doing stuff in Europe. And she always told me as a child is that keep your mind strong, because computers are being mimicked after us. Okay. So this woman, and I got pictures of me sitting in front of like the first word processor with these big reels, you know, as this little kid. And, you know, this woman goes from, you know, this big room with punch cards to playing Scrabble with my mom on the internet. Okay. So technology goes really fast. And when we understand that this has been going on, and when they saw a way, because they were always looking, they being the globalists, okay, of ways to control the masses, because when I believe it was, the Renaissance period, when the merchant class became wealthier than the monarchies, okay, they resented it, because now the people found wealth. And when the people had wealth, it was this to the monarchies, okay? Screw you.
Yeah.
Okay. But then we found ways to do it, called the Vatican. We're going to go in and we're going to do things, and we're going to harm people. We're going to take their land. We're going to take their prosperity. So there's always been this back and forth. However, we live in duality for a reason. And there's a reason why we hear in various places that this is biblical.
Yes.
And it is in all of the ancient texts. If you read them, you know, and I do, I've got like the Book of Zoran, the Quran, the Hamadi, you know, there's all these others, and you sit and you read them, and it's in there. And it's really about the cycle of mankind. But we need duality, and sometimes we need a stronger negative to really bring it to the positive, because the pendulum has to swing both ways.
Right.
And so if we didn't experience how horrific thing and wake up to the horrors of trafficking, because I've been helping with that just because of my profession. People are like, oh, that doesn't happen here, until they're like, oh my God, it's happening here. I'm like, yeah, Minnesota is one of the top states for it.
Yeah.
You know, and understanding that this is really, you know, they're doing things. I mean, I think Tim Tebow I think it was a TikTok video where he talked about how they're dismembering women and children for human sacrifices.
Yep.
And so, but we have to understand that there is this inhumanity, so that we can come to the new place, because we have to move to a new place. And that will happen. However, some people need to go through this deep rest, sleep, zombified, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, so that they can maybe experience themselves at like how easy they were manipulated into, and recognizing, oh my goodness, I really fell for that. How did that happen? You know, then they start asking, how did that happen to me? And then they awaken to what within them needs to be healed. So when we ultimately step back and allow for that and hold everything in possibility with what within humanity, what within the world at large needs to be healed, because when we look at that, we can always bring it back to here with what within me needs to be healed, because when we work on us, we change the world.
Amen.
I love that you're talking about that, because I have gone through, since I started, like, my reality was broken, that was like jump started my healing. And I've done therapy, I've done yoga. That was nothing compared to what I went through. I mean, like, on the ground, like, pit in my stomach. Like, I went through so many deep, like, dark nights of the soul, and came out on the other side. And, like, just some stuff that I didn't even realize was there, and it was deep. And what shifted for me also is just allowing it and sitting in it and not running from it. And I didn't realize how much I've been running my entire life, and how that was literally creating my reality over and over again, just by living out these traumas and not healing them.
And there's a number of techniques, like you're talking about, what can people do? Well, they first of all have to get to that place of recognition. But there's so many things. There's like constellation therapy, which is really interesting. There's a really cool YouTube video put out by Emily Waymeyer, and it's in black and white, where you see Bert Hellinger, who developed it. And this was developed watching the Zulu tribe and talking with their ancestors. So people stand in as part of the morphogenic field and as representatives, and you get to speak to an ancestor and start resolving things. So if it's like, you know, you have a loved one that passed away, someone will step in and be that representative in the field, and you get to talk, and it's amazing. The videos, it's like, you got to watch it. It's like, it's crazy. And I've done them. They are profound healing on a deep level. Then there's another technique called walking in their shoes. And this is part of what they teach, like, actors, is to really take it on and you start walking it. But there's getting into that field again, you know, and then people going through and just, you know what, you have to be there. You're going to have to cry and get into dark night of the soul and just be there. And then knowing ahead of time, you do have resources. You know, people will find their way. I've always believed that, you know, with our clinic too, somebody cancels and I always check in. I'm like, do I block this off so I can take care of stuff? And if it's like, no, and boom, within minutes, somebody takes a spot and I'm like, okay, they need to come in. And it's usually because they're like, I don't know what to do. And then they're ready to hear it. But if they're caught up into that, they're just in that, and just think of it as like a tide, a rip tide. Eventually it's going to spit them out. But you just have to wait until it spits them out, or they learn how to swim out of it. And we can be there and just go, there is an alternative. Because right now they're seeing it as one or the other. Two things are not a choice. It's either this or this. 3 is true choice, because now there's another option. What is your third option? Because now you have a choice. This is either or. This is choice.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Sharon. You've really brought a lot of amazing information to us. And how can people find you on either social media, or do you have a website?
We have Collective Harmony Healing Arts, so it's ch-healingarts.com. And we're working with getting some stuff going, but we do have a Facebook page. I'm working with a marketing branding person right now so we can tie in everything we're doing. And eventually we will have like a little YouTube channel going and whatnot, but happy to come back and chat with you guys again. And
I would love to have you on the show again. And for everyone that's watching, I'll link like your website and social media underneath this video. And do you do any like appointments virtually, or is it all in-house?
No, we do things virtually, and we're getting those links set up. We tried to get it going, and there was just something that we just thought, but definitely people can just go ahead and schedule, and then my VA will just send them a link, and we're going to be having all that going. So they can schedule a coaching session virtually. We do body coding virtually. So yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Sharon. Yeah. And we'll definitely absolutely have you back on. And hopefully next time we can get Jess in here as well, because I'm sure she'd have a ton of questions for you just on her side. But
no problem. Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. All right. Bye-bye.